Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. We're back again. For those of you who might be watching this after the live stream is done, this is actually take 2 of the live stream because I do the show live. And when something technical goes wrong, I don't always catch the technical things going wrong. This is one of the reasons why I always have done my shows not live. But in doing it live, these types of little problems can go wrong. So we are back. The show is back up and we're going to get this show going again. So hello, guys, everybody. Thanks for joining me today. Okay, so I'll go through the whole spiel again because for all those people who are watching us after the fact. So if you want to get a question here onto the John Campea podcast, it's simple. Just email me anytime at thejohncampeapodcast@gmail.com. That's thejohncampeapodcast@gmail.com. What I'm going to do, again, is go through 6 questions that I picked out from the emails. You can see the questions in the description of this video below. Hey, everybody. Thanks for coming back over to the live stream. Check out the description below. That's where all the questions are. So I'm going to go through these 6 questions, and then I'm going to go to the live chat board and see the questions that you guys are throwing in there now. And I'm getting a lot of teasing from people in the chat board for what happened. Yeah, I was doing the show. I think I got like 8 minutes into it and the audio stopped working. And I guess somehow the microphone got turned off. So anyway, let's get to the first question today. And the first question today comes to us from, again, Keith O'Neill. And Keith O'Neill writes, "Hey John, nice video on breaking down how a film's weekend box office is estimated and calculated. How come some movies have such astronomical budgets, like The Amazing Spider-Man 2? The film's production budget was reported to be between $200 and $250 million. The advertising budget was also almost $200 million. Don't studios just set themselves up for failure when they give movies out of control budgets like that?" Thanks a lot for the question, Keith. And yes, it does. They do set themselves up for failure. Now, here's the funny thing about this is that it wasn't that long ago. Like today we hear that a big superhero movie costs $200 million. And we go, okay, yeah, that's normal. It wasn't that long ago when, what was that one Kevin Costner movie where he was, the world was an ocean planet, like something water, planet water. I can't remember. Guys in the chat board, give me an update here. What is that all about? Let me know what that's happening with. Anyway, so Waterworld. Was that what it was called? Waterworld? Anyway, so I think Waterworld comes out and it was something like $125 million. I can't remember off the top of my head. All I remember was it was $100 and something million to make, and the world lost its mind. It's like, oh my God, Waterworld cost that much money. And people are like, how can you spend that much money on a frickin' movie? How can you possibly justify spending that much money on a movie? And now today it's like $200 million, no problem. Everybody just spends $200 million. And here's where it really becomes a problem. And I've been talking about this issue for years now, okay? Ever since way back in the early days of me being at AMC theaters. And AMC theaters used to hate that I talked about this, but I used to talk about this a lot. And here's the issue. The issue is this, is that we as audience members need to understand, because you talk to some people about, man, can you believe that studio spent $185 million on that movie? And some people thinking they sound smart goes, well, why do you care? Are you a financial investor in the studio? Why do you care how much it costs? Because here's why you should care, all right? We as audience members, as film fans, we need to understand that there is a direct connection, okay, between how much money studios spend on making their films and what we end up having to spend to go to the movie theater to enjoy those films, all right? We've got to understand that those are not two separate issues. How much our movie tickets cost, some people like to think, has nothing to do with how much the movie cost. Yes, it fucking does. It absolutely does. Because here's the thing. When a movie theater, or a movie studio, I should say, spends $50 million on making a movie, there's only so much money then they need to make at the box office in order not only to make back their money, but to make a profit. A movie that spends $50 million to get made can make $218 million at the box office, and that's profitable. They've made money. Yay, everybody's happy. However, if that same movie costs $220 million to make. Well, now that studio, instead of making $218 million to make everybody money and having everybody go, yay, that studio now, instead of needing to make $218 million, that studio now needs that movie to make close to $500 million at the box office or more just to break even. By spending that much more money, they've increased their need from $200-something million now to $500+ million. So the more the movie studios spend on making their movies, the more money they need to have come back into them. Now, let's just talk on the one hand for a second here, that the spending of studios on making their monies has spiraled way out of control. It's absolutely out of control. Because, look, it's not that long to say, well, John, you should know that visual effects movies cost a lot of money to make. Yeah, I worked in the visual effects industry for a number of years. I know it costs money to do visual effects. But guess what? Look at a movie like District 9. Now, District 9 is a rare situation, absolutely, but let's just use it as an example for a second. District 9, a visual effects heavy with stunning CG, photorealistic CG lead characters and all that kind of crap. They spent around $30 or $40 million to make that movie. $30 or $40 million to make that movie. Now, if that same movie was made by Disney or by Warner Brothers or by Universal today, guess what? They $180 million, $205 million to make that movie. Because their spending is radically out of control. Out of control. And here's where it becomes dangerous to us, is we've already established that as movies studios make more expensive movies, they need to make more money. The problem, though, is that movie ticket sales have been going down. Box office hasn't been going down, but the reason ticket sales have been going down, but box office has not, is because they've been charging us more money for movie tickets. So when, we have a box office record year, they like to create the illusion that, more people bought movie tickets. Not necessarily, they didn't. We actually sold less movie tickets. It's just that you charged us more for those movie tickets, so it looks like you are making more money, but you make it look like more people are going to the theater. So as their costs increase, they need our movie tickets to increase in price to make up for the extra money they're spending on making these ridiculously expensive movies. And I'm totally fine with ridiculously expensive movies, but they don't need to be that expensive. There are movies out there, like you look at one CG animated film, says $185 million to make. Then look at the Emoji Movie. Now, granted, the Emoji Movie was a terrible movie, but it looked perfectly fine. Visually on screen, it looked perfectly great. The reported production budget of that movie, $50 million. Whereas another movie that looks a little bit better than Emoji Movie did visually cost more than triple the price to make it. Spending in Hollywood is out of control. And the reason I care about that and the reason you should care about that is because when spending is out of control, it increases your costs for going and enjoying the movies. It used to drive me crazy. Remember back in the day when Robert Downey Jr. was going to be leaving the Avengers and they had to work out a contract? It used to drive me crazy when I would hear fans, because our natural inclination is to always take the actor side. Whenever there's a dispute between the actor and the studio, our natural inclination is to take the side of the actor. I don't know why that is, but that's what we do. But Robert Downey Jr. was going through his contract dispute, right, with Disney. And it was reported like in Avengers, like Robert Downey Jr. got $50 million and he wanted a pay increase to keep hanging around and doing these Disney movies. And I love Robert Downey Jr. I'm a huge Robert Downey Jr. I love him as Iron Man. I never want him to retire as Iron Man, ever, till he's old and gray and can't get up to walk into the studio anymore. I want Robert Downey Jr. being Iron Man. But I want him being Iron Man at a reasonable price. Because then the fans would go, come on, Disney, just pay him the money. Don't be so cheap. Robert Downey Jr. deserves the money. And they would complain that Robert Downey Jr. should be getting $50+ million. And then 5 minutes later, these same people would complain that their movie tickets cost so much. And I would want to pull my hair out and go, you don't see how those two issues are connected? You're sitting there arguing that a freaking actor, I don't care, unless that actor is on stage curing brain cancer, he should not be getting paid $50 million for a freaking movie. Ever. And then if you want to argue that he should get $50 million, I never want to hear you complain that you got to pay $15 for a movie ticket, because you are enabling them and forcing them to charge us that much money for a movie ticket. Don't think for a second that how much Robert Downey Jr. or Jim Carrey or Julia Roberts, whoever gets paid whatever amount of money, that what they get paid isn't connected to how much you got to pay for a movie ticket, or how much you have to pay for your movie rental, or how much you have to pay for your movie service or for your entertainment. The two issues are completely connected. And it drives me crazy when I look at some budget sheets. It's like these studios are spending ridiculous amounts of money. Now, it's not just actors. Actors is just the easy thing to point to because we all are familiar with actors. That's easy. But when you go down the list, the costs that the studios have allowed to spiral out of control, and then the studios just go, well, it doesn't matter. We won't pay for it. We'll make the fans pay for it by increasing their ticket prices. Yay! So yes, we should all care as film fans. You should care. I should care desperately about the problem of spiraling out of control costs of making movies, because ultimately it's not the studios who pay for it, and ultimately it's not the movie theaters who pay for it. Ultimately, it's you that pays for it. Ultimately, it's me that pays for it. So yes, we need to care about this issue. And they did spend too much money on The Amazing Spider-Man 2. I've seen other movies that look just as good that cost $125 million to make. Yes, certain actors deserve more money than others. Yes, but no actor for doing 3 months' work of standing on a set and whatever should get paid $30 million. No frickin' way. Unless they're fixing a guy's broken spine so he can walk again, they should not get that kind of money. Because ultimately you pay for it and I pay for it. Anyway, I've gone on this a little bit too long here. I need to move on, so I will move on. But I want to know, what do you guys think? Maybe you think I'm totally wrong. I'm open to having my mind changed. Jump down to the comment section and leave your thoughts on that. All right, let's move on to the next question. And yes, we still have audio. This is fantastic. All right, the next question comes to us from Brandon. And Brandon writes, this week, the CEO of IMAX was addressing investors, and he told them that IMAX will begin showing more 2D versions of movies in the domestic market because customers show a clear preference for 2D over 3D. Hallelujah. Anyway, as someone who purposely avoids IMAX showings because I hate 3D, I'm excited by this news. So my question is, could we finally be seeing an industry shift away from 3D? And the angelic hosts of heaven sang hallelujah. Yeah, and I think we've been seeing this more and more. You know, I've been a big outspoken. I remember AMC, when I worked at AMC, man, they used to pull their hair out when I would get on our AMC shows and complain about 3D and how much I hate 3D. And like AMC, we make money off 3D. Stop talking about that. I'm like, nope, I hate 3D. And I'm going to keep talking about how much I hate 3D. Fire me if you want. Anyway, and they never did. They had a lot of integrity, the company did. So the 3D to me is the biggest wasted gimmick. And a gimmick is not necessarily a bad thing. Gimmick can be a good thing. But 3D is such a wasted gimmick. Now, I know there are some of you guys out there that you appreciate 3D and you like 3D, and that's awesome. That's everything is subjective. You have a preference for 3D. I respect that greatly. That doesn't change my opinion about 3D and what a waste of time it is, but I respect that you enjoy it. So please take my attack on 3D. Don't take it as an attack on your appreciation for 3D. I'm just talking about my opinion of 3D here, okay? So anyway, I've never understood the notion of wanting that some artists spend years making this motion picture, crafting the images to make it look beautiful and gorgeous. And the first thing you want to do when you walk into a movie theater is slap a piece of tinted film over your eyes and deaden the picture. I've never understood that. I have never found it to be anything but something I get over really quick. Like 3D is just a waste. I think it's a total waste. It's just an excuse for them to charge more for movie tickets. We just talked about that a little bit. And more, here's an interesting phenomenon. A lot of press screenings for movies that would be in 3D, this is interesting. A lot of press screenings I would go to, they would have a whole bunch of press show up, and then they would say, hey, we've got Theater 1 is going to show the 3D version of it, and if you want the 3D version of it, here's your glasses. Theater 2 is going to have the non-3D version. And, you know, when that first happened, years ago, when that first started happening, I'd see more and more of the journalists go into the 3D screenings. Weird thing though, lately, when I get to those theaters now and for press screenings and they're showing two different versions of it, they're showing a 3D version and a non-3D version of it, more and more, like which one was that? I was at the Spider-Man Homecoming press screening and they did that. They had a 3D screening and a non-3D screening. And the non-3D screening room filled up way before the 3D screening room. Like more and more, just like you give us the option, non-3D please, non-3D please, non-3D please, boom, and away we go. And IMAX recently put out a statement saying, yeah, our customer base is showing a clear preference that they prefer to see 2D movies in IMAX rather than 3D movies in IMAX. And we're going to start shifting away from showing 3D movies. I think we are definitely going to be seeing that. And, I think we saw that really starting to happen because it was just a couple of years ago that every single freaking TV in Best Buy was 3D capable. It felt like every single TV was 3D capable. And more, the television industry has moved away from producing. You can still get 3D TVs, I'm sure, but they move much more away from that. It's not the main thing anymore because people just weren't buying them. People didn't care about them. I actually only know one person. Now, I'm sure maybe you know 5 or 6 people. I only know one person that has a 3D TV. That's it. And I work in the entertainment industry, and all my friends work in the entertainment industry, and only one friend that I have has a 3D TV. So with that shift happening in television, now with IMAX coming out and saying, hey, look, our customers are saying they prefer 2D over 3D. I hope that this will usher in an era when studios stop making 3D movies. I really do. Until the day comes where they can do a 3D movie without us having to wear glasses and not make it look funny. Like if it can look great and look cool and not have us need 3D glasses and all that kind of stuff, when that day comes, I'll be interested in rechecking out the issue. But until that day comes, as far as I'm concerned, 3D can die a horrible, screaming, painful death. I hate 3D. It's stupid. Anyway, again, no disrespect to anybody. If you enjoy 3D, that's awesome. That's the great thing about being film fans. We all have different tastes, and I respect that. For me, I want the damn thing to die. All right, thanks a lot. But as always, guys, the important thing is, what do you think about the whole issue 3D? Jump down in the comment section and leave your thoughts. All right, let's move on to the next question. And the next question is, and Eric in the chat board is saying, porn in 3D is great. Never tried it, but I don't think that would be so great. Anyway, the next question comes to us from Samuel Araya, who writes, my question is about the movie which is produced by Mark Wahlberg called The Roman. This movie called The Roman is based on Con Iggulden Emperor book series and tells historical fictionalized story about the life of Roman general Julius Caesar. It's already been 4 years since the news about this movie, and still I hear nothing about it. Is there a reason why this movie is still not made? Yeah, so a number of years ago, all the trades reported that Mark Wahlberg has signed up as a producer to produce this story about a young Julius Caesar. They called it the Batman Begins of Julius Caesar. And that's cool. And it actually sounded very, very interesting. So, the question is, why didn't this movie get made? Here's the reality. Why specifically The Roman didn't get made? I don't know the specifics. But it does open up a wider issue that I think a lot of us need to keep in mind is about 1 out of every 10 movies that get started actually ever makes it to the big screen. 1 out of every 10, hell, maybe it's 1 out of every 100. Some movie projects die at different stages along the way. Maybe a producer says, hey, I bought the rights to this idea, and he hired a big screenwriter to write a script, so the wheels are in motion, and it dies there. Maybe a script gets written, they like the script, they attach a director to it, and they attach an actor to it, and then it dies there. There are like 1,000 different stages from initial conception to actually getting it in front of cameras and get the cameras to start rolling that happen where a movie project can die. And the reality is, a lot more of them die than actually make it to the screen. And that's just the reality of it. So, and this stretches out to, talent contracts. I've had debates with people to say, John, yes, they are doing, just for argument's sake, John, yes, they are doing, picture frame the movie, parts 5, 6, and 7 because the lead actor signed a 7-film deal. So you're wrong there. I just proved it. They're going to do Picture Frame the movie 5, 6, and 7. It's like, just because they signed a contract doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. It just means it's possible, but it certainly doesn't mean it's going to happen. So yeah, just because they brought on Mark Wahlberg doesn't mean the movie's actually happening. It just means it reached that stage. And then at some point, whether it was at that stage or another stage a little bit later on, it eventually died. So yeah, I mean, that's just part of the reality. But it does sound like a cool movie. I am interested in seeing that movie. It sounds like a freaking expensive movie to make. So if they could find a way to do it and do it for a reasonable price and make it really good, I'm all for it. But yeah, it's just another long line of movies that died along the way. All right, let's move on to the next question. And the next question today comes to us from Taylor Hardiman, who writes, without spoilers, given the success of the franchise and how War for the Planet of the Apes ended, do you see a sequel trilogy being announced sometime in the future? Early AMC Days fan here. Thanks a lot for the question, Taylor. Well, it's interesting that you say given the success, because, you know, as I mentioned, I did my box office report video yesterday. It's up on my YouTube channel right now. Very conspicuous by its absence from the top 5 is War for the Planet of the Apes. Only in its 3rd week, and it's dropped out of the top 5 already. It's pretty much made as much money as it's going to make. And I think it's safe to say, nobody wants to hear this, but I'm going to call it. War for the Planet of the Apes is a bomb. It flopped. It's a very good movie. I enjoyed it. My review for War for the Planet of the Apes is up on my channel. But War for the Planet of the Apes bombed. It just didn't make money. The movie cost, I believe, about $150 million to make. Right now, it's made around 230, I think. And that is not enough to recoup its costs. I mean, the War for the Planet of the Apes needs to make in the $350 to $400 million range just to break even. And they're not going to do that. It's impossible to imagine, but War for the Planet of the Apes being a part of a terrific trilogy, being a very good movie on its own, having critical praise and audiences liked it, and it's a flop. Why people didn't go back? This is a real mystery to me because people loved the last one. Dawn of the Planet of the Apes was an amazing movie. There was a hunger for people to come back. There was a very good, even though it was an incredibly deceptive and misleading advertising campaign, because War for the Planet of the Apes has nothing to do with war. Anyway, it had a good marketing campaign, a great previous movie, and this was a good movie that got positive word of mouth, that got positive critic response, and nobody went to go see it. Well, a lot of people saw it, but compared to how much money it needed to make, it has lost. It's going to lose the money. It's a flop. So are they going to make a sequel trilogy? I don't think so. I think this War of the Planet of the Apes series is now done. Walking out of the theater, having just watched War for the Planet of the Apes, I would have thought, oh, yes, they'll make a part 4 here probably in a couple of years. But I really don't see how they'll do it. I don't see a studio wanting to step up and throw more money away. And again, this one's a mystery to me. This is one that I need some really smart analysts, Hollywood analysts, to sit down and break down and write a report on what happened with War of the Planet of the Apes, because this one's a freaking mystery to me, guys. And I'm curious, if you saw the movie, what do you think? Jump down in the comment section and let me know. All right, let's move on to the next question. And the next question today comes to us from Charleston Thomas, who writes, hello, John. I'm a huge comic book film fan and love talking about these films to my friends and family. Well, don't we all? But the one question that I find ridiculous, that I've been hearing since Batman vs. Superman came out, is how is Batman able to fight Superman? Doesn't anyone remember Lex Luther? Lex holds his own with Superman all the time, and no one says anything. All right, thanks a lot for the question, Charlton. There's a couple of aspects to your question here that I want to talk about. Yes, I agree. When Batman vs. Superman was coming out, a lot of people would write to me all the time. It's like, how the flippity flop, hashtag flippity flop. I own that now. Anyway, how the flippity flop can Batman fight Superman? Batman can't fight Superman, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, well, Batman's the smartest man on the planet. Basically, one of them, top 1%. And given preparation time, like, yes, if you just pull Batman out of a dinner meeting and pull Superman out of the Fortress of Solitude and put him in a closed room, say, okay, now fight to the death, Superman is going to slaughter him, obviously. But you give Batman time to think and prep and prepare and strategize, he always comes up with ways to fight Superman. And I think, I've mentioned this on a podcast earlier this week, I think, or last week. I think the most ballsy, awesome thing that Batman versus Superman did, because going into it, people would ask me, hey, before Batman versus Superman opened, they say, who's going to win? Is Batman or Superman going to win? I'm saying they're going to have a bullshit draw. They're not going to have Batman or Superman win. They're going to fight, and then it's going to be a draw. And they'll both go at the last minute, oh, we have to stop fighting and go save the world. I thought they were going to do that. And they didn't do that. They had the balls to have Batman fight Superman and have a definitive winner. And I would have been cool if it was Superman. I would have been cool if it was Batman. But I never dreamed that Warner Brothers was going to have the balls, or any studio would have had the balls to have Batman fight Superman and definitively have a winner. And your winner, spoiler alert, was Batman. That fight, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Batman won the fight. So, yeah, you give Batman time to plan, and obviously kryptonite has to be part of the equation and all that kind of stuff. Batman can win that fight. Okay, so let's move on to another aspect of your question. And the other aspect of your question was, it drives you crazy when you hear people complain about, don't they know about Lex Luthor? Don't they know that Lex Luthor holds his own against Superman all the time? No, they don't. People don't know about Lex Luthor. When people think of Lex Luthor, they think of Hugh Jackman. They don't think of, whatever incarnation of the comic book character you're thinking of. They think of Kevin Spacey. All right? They think of Nimblenuts in Batman vs. Superman as Lex Luthor. They think of Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor. No. People don't know that Lex Luthor fights Superman. Why? And people get mad at me all the time when I say this, but this isn't an opinion, folks. This is statistically provable fact. Not a ton of people read comic books. And that's a bad thing. That's a sad thing. But we, as fans of comic books and movies, we need to be aware and cognitive of the fact that the vast, vast, vast majority of moviegoers out there do not read comic books. The vast majority of people out there don't read comic books. It's just a reality. I remember once I pulled up, some numbers. We were talking about Fantastic Four. This is when it was still a comic book back in the day. And we were having this debate, and this one guy said to me, everybody reads Fantastic Four comic books. And I said, you know what? And I pulled up the sales numbers. Said more people watched Mailbag last week than read Fantastic Four. I mean, that's just the reality of it. As a matter of fact, I probably shouldn't share this, but I will. When I left Collider, I put on my blog post about why I was leaving Collider was that, there was a number of things that Complex, the parent company of Collider, I love Complex. I have a great relationship with the people at Complex. I have a great amount of respect for them. We had our differences, but it was always very, very professional. It was always very, very handled very well. I will work again with Complex anytime. I enjoy them very much. But, Complex really wanted to move forward. This is only one of many, many issues. Okay, this wasn't the issue. Okay, let's be very clear about it. This is just one of a much broader thing. But they really wanted to do this new show called Comic Book Shopping, and they are doing the show, by the way. And the quality, if you haven't watched if you are a comic book fan, like I'm not talking about comic book movies. If you are a fan of going to comic book stores and buying comic books, the show that's up on Collider right now called Comic Book Shopping, it is beyond television quality. It is an excellent made show. The production value of that show is fantastic. It is a well-made, fabulous show. And if you are somebody who enjoys going to comic book shops and crap like that, then you should head on over and give that show a shot. Take a look at it. But, so they really wanted to make this show called Comic Book Shopping. And my concern, I did not think we should, because my concern was the amount of money and the amount of resources and the amount of time and the amount of energy that we're going to have to dedicate our production staff and post-production staff to making this show, because it is top notch, is not going to be worth it when you look at how many views it's going to get. Because I made the argument, look, not enough people, especially in our audience and our demographic, go out to comic book shops and buy comic books. And I stated my opinion very firmly. We should not be doing this show. We should not be spending that much money and resources and effort. We are going to tap ourselves out when we should be using that money and resources effort on other shows that our audience does watch. And as happens, the bosses win the argument. I lost the argument. And again, this is not the reason why I left Complex or why I left Collider. It's just, one of many things that were in there. And they were going to go ahead and do it. And sure enough, they have made these shows. And again, the highest of quality. It's like I said, it's beyond television quality. They do such a good job making those shows. You really should check it out if it's something that interests you. But my mailbag episodes got more views than these things. And my mailbag episode took me, one other person, and a camera, done in 35 minutes. Whereas, there were episodes of comic book shopping that we had to fly people to Vegas. We had to hire local crews. We have to spend this money and that money and blah, blah, blah. And it gets like 30,000 views, or it gets like 40,000 views. And I hope that show takes off and becomes a 1 million view show, because like I said, the quality and the creativity and everything that goes into that show is so good. And again, the show is called Comic Book Shopping. If you are into the comic book store scene, you must check this show out. Take it, share it, tell your friends about it. But anyway, that just goes to the point that we were talking about before, that we as film fans and films of comic books, we have to come to grips with the reality that the vast, vast majority of movie-going fans are not comic book readers. Even people who love comic book movies are not comic book readers. And we can have good debates about whether or not people who like comic book movies should be reading comic books. Absolutely, we can have that discussion. I think that's a worthwhile discussion to have. But the fact of the matter is the vast majority of them don't. So when you ask the question, don't people realize that Lex Luthor holds his own against Superman all the time? The answer to your question is no, they don't realize that, because the vast majority of people have never picked up a comic book to know that. So yes, that whole Batman can't fight Superman thing, that is a thing that drives me crazy too. Absolutely it does. But we can't expect the average film-going fan to know better, because the average film-going fan does not read comic books. So we just have to assume that. But again, let me plug it one more time. The show over on Collider is called Comic Book Shopping. It is one of the highest quality pieces of content you'll find on YouTube anywhere. I'll put the quality of that show up against any show on YouTube, anywhere, anytime. If you're somebody who's into that scene, you should go give that show a look and give it a chance. Anyway, all right, last question I'll take from email today, and then I will go over to the chat board. Okay, let's see this now. All right, the question comes to us from Joe Flaherty. Is that the same guy from the Canadian comedy troupe? Anyway, he writes, my question is if Warner Brothers is going to be doing a huge expansive Oscar campaign for Wonder Woman, is there a chance that Dunkirk's Oscar chances would be hurt because of a lack of attention from Warner Brothers campaign headquarters? And could this even further affect the Oscar chances for Blade Runner, if Blade Runner turns out to be as great as we hope it is? Fair enough question. So for those of you who don't know what he's talking about, last week there came out a report that Warner Brothers was considering, they hadn't decided yet, but they were considering doing a major Oscar push for Wonder Woman. I put up a video about this. I think my video was called Warner Brothers Wonder Woman Oscar Push Legit, or what did I call it? Legit, or is it fake? Not fake, but is it a publicity stunt? Legit or publicity stunt is what I called it. And I wholeheartedly know that it's a publicity stunt. And publicity stunt does not, people hear the word publicity stunt, they think, oh, that's a bad thing. No. Publicity stunts can be great. And I personally think this would be a smart one, because I think Warner Brothers, if Warner Brothers does do an Oscar push for Wonder Woman, and they were saying they were going to do a push for Best Picture and Best Director for Patty Jenkins. And that's great. If they do that push, Warner Brothers knows, they are incredibly smart people over there. They know Wonder Woman has no chance at a Best Picture nomination. If any comic book film this year has a legit chance at a Best Picture nomination. It's Logan, okay? But they know it has no chance for Best Picture. And they know it has no chance for Best Director. But that doesn't mean they shouldn't do a push, because doing a push does a couple of things. Number one, it draws more attention to their property. And you want to you got Justice League coming in November. You want as much attention on this positive, well-received movie as you can on Wonder Woman. Have everybody talking about Wonder Woman, and then we got Justice League coming, which just so happens to have Wonder Woman in it in November. It would be incredibly smart for Warner Brothers to do that, even though they know they don't have a chance at actually getting a nomination. The second reason it would be a good idea to do such an Oscar push is that it would be a really nice show of support for Patty Jenkins and the other producers and filmmakers of Wonder Woman. Like, even if Warner Brothers knows Wonder Woman has no chance at any Oscar nominations, for Warner Brothers to come out and not just say, but demonstrate, Patty Jenkins and your team, we support you. And we've got your back, and we're going to do, because you did such great work for us, we're going to do an Oscar campaign for you. Who cares if we get the nomination or not? We're going to do the campaign for you anyway. That's incredibly smart. So even if they're not going to get any nominations, and they know they're not going to get any nominations, it draws more attention to the movie Wonder Woman, which will help your Justice League movie. And number two, it shows support for the creative team behind your movie. It's a great idea. I think they should do it. I honestly think Warner Brothers should do it. Okay. But the question really is, if they do that for Wonder Woman, won't that hurt the chances for Dunkirk or other films? No, it won't. Not at all. If a studio can handle making both of those movies, that's a lot more energy intensive and finance intensive than doing an Oscar campaign for those movies. So look, here's the thing. If Warner Brothers couldn't handle doing a big Oscar campaign for both Wonder Woman and Dunkirk, they would never be able to make 8 movies a year, because that's a much bigger project, a much bigger thing to handle. So don't worry about that. If they do an Oscar campaign for Wonder Woman, it will not hurt their Oscar campaign for Dunkirk. Absolutely won't affect it one bit. They'll be totally fine with that. And I do think Dunkirk is going to get some Oscar buzz. Okay, now with that out of the way, I'm going to go over to the chat board and take some questions from you guys over at the chat board. To take your questions, start firing in questions. I'm on a little bit of a delay. I think I'm on a 30-second delay. So I'm going to kill some time here. Well, I wait for you guys to put in some questions. Forgive me if I have to pause, because I'm trying to read questions and talk to you guys at the same time. It's a little bit tricky. So anyway, okay, let's get in here. Let's see if anybody's asking anything. Somebody's asking me, Outlaw Noah's asking, did you see that image of Snoke from The Last Jedi? Your thoughts? Yeah, I saw that picture of Snoke. Actually, on yesterday's podcast, we talked about the Red Guards, with the same pictures that leaked. And here's the thing. I don't know why people are so excited about that picture of Snoke. He looks just like he did in the movie, except he was a hologram in the movie. And this was a more in the flesh kind of picture. But still, he looked exactly the same as he did in The Force Awakens. So, yeah, it was a cool picture and everything. But I don't see why people were getting so excited about it, because he looks exactly the same. Anyway. All right, so Helder Alameda is writing, John, are you going to have some guests on your show? No, I don't think so. For a couple of reasons. I do this show at like 9 o'clock in the morning. Everybody has jobs. Everybody's working. And I'm a solo act now. Like, I don't have money to pay people to come in here and be on here. Everybody has jobs and responsibilities that they have to be out doing. So, no, I can't see me having guests. I think once in a while, maybe I'll bring in a guest via Skype, maybe a couple of my film friends from Canada or something like that. I'll do that sometime. But for the most part, the John Campea podcast is going to be a solo podcast. Okay, let's see what else is going on here. Let's see. Mr. Spider 336 writes, hey, John, do you think Jesse Eisenberg should have been the Riddler? No. Why would you? Why? they didn't have a Riddler. So why would Jesse Eisenberg have been the Riddler? I don't understand that question. Anyway, next question. Let's see. Hey, John, what is the worst film all year? Okay, good question. There are a couple of candidates for worst film of the year. Assassin's Creed, I believe that was this year. Could be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. But really the worst film of the year, I mean, Baywatch has to be considered a contender. Baywatch is just brutally dreadful. Emoji Movie has to be considered as a contender. But I've got to stick with 50 Shades Darker. I'll stick with 50 Shades Darker. 50 Shades Darker is so inept. I mean, it really does feel like high school students made the movie, and not talented high school students, by the way. So I'll go with 50 Shades Darker. Okay. And let's see. Declarin' Jam writes, how well do you think Black Panther will perform at the box office? Great question. We've got the first trailer for Black Panther. Crushed it. Just a great trailer. So much better than that awful first poster they put out. That terrible Photoshop poster. Remember that first poster they put up for Black Panther, just him sitting in that throne? It looks so bad. So bad. But then the trailer comes out and looks so good. There's a lot of things depending on it. We're going to have to see how the next couple of comic book movies do. If the next few comic book movies are great, like we're talking Thor, we're talking Justice League, these movies come out and they're great, then that will be a good wave of positive momentum for the comic book genre. And, then Black Panther can benefit from that. Do the movies suck? Do Thor Ragnarok and Justice League disappoint people? And if so, that will negatively affect Black Panther. What will the reviews of it sound like? I think when the early reviews for Black Panther comes out, that'll dictate a lot of how well it'll do. I'll go out on a limb though. I'm going to say, based on nothing, remember, I reserve the right to change my prediction because we've got a lot of other things to take into consideration, like how these other movies do, all this kind of crap. But for now, I'm going to guess 600 million worldwide is going to be my guess. All right. Last question I'll take of the day. Will Cillian Murphy get big roles after Dunkirk? I don't think Dunkirk is going to affect his career at all, positively or negatively. I think Cillian Murphy is a very respected actor in the business. But is the day come and gone when he's going to get big lead roles? I don't think so, but I think he can be a very, very valuable as a supporting actor because he is a terrific talent. But I don't think Dunkirk, because of the nature of the movie, I don't think Dunkirk is really going to affect it one way or the other too much. All right, guys, it's getting on to 10 o'clock, which means Collider Movie Talk is starting up here in a minute. I'm going to go so I can let you guys go and watch that. I want to encourage you, head on over and watch Collider Movie Talk as well. Tell them John Campea sent you, said hi to you. So again, guys, thank you so much for joining me for this podcast. It really is an honor that you guys would choose to spend some of your time today with me in my spare room doing this. I'm incredibly humbled and honored. Thank you so much for doing that. And guys, while you're here, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you like the content I produce, please make sure you click like, comment on it, share it around, not just this video, but any one of my videos, share them around. And make sure you're following me on Twitter and on Facebook at John Campea on my social media. I do a lot of my announcements there. So again, guys, sorry for those of you watching the snafu at the beginning and me having to restart this damn thing. Thank you for being here. I'll check you guys out next time. So until then, guys, bye-bye.